equivalent of climbing Mount Everest, is what he called it, where it was 39 hours of climbing straight up. And he prioritized that and unfortunately fell ill. But we have a little video from him that we'll play real quick. And then we have equally esteemed panelists and guests that I'll introduce here in a second.
Hey everyone, I am really sorry that I can't be there today in person. As you can tell a little bit from my voice, it's not great, and I certainly don't want to be infecting anybody out there, either on the plane and getting there or any of you in person. So I am self-isolating here at home as I try to get back on the mend. And again, sorry and apologies that I can't be there meeting you in person, but I am going to make it up and come out there hopefully in another month or two and get another chance where we get to have a makeup, and I'll get a chance to meet you all in person. And tell you also why I'm so excited about Datalogz and some of the things that I think are really incredible that are coming up over the horizon for the entire data stack and different data communities. It's such an exciting time that we're in. We know that there's an incredible amount in the world needing to be data-driven more than ever as we navigate these complex times. And so many things to talk about, and that's just touching the surface on the data side, not even including the AI side of the house. So looking forward to seeing you in a little bit later on, but thanks again and apologies that I can't be there.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for playing that video, and we're all hoping DJ feels better very soon. And for those who don't know me, I'm Logan. I'm one of the founders here at Datalogz. I started the company, I guess, about 4 years ago. What we do is go into the largest analytics BI environments with tools like Tableau, Power BI, Qlik, and we automate the entire administration and ops side. And so we're a startup based out of LIC. That's a little bit about us and my background. And today we have two great panelists. We have Guy and Xingchu. And I'll give a little brief intro of each of them and turn over themselves to a much better and more detailed one. But Guy here was the Chief Data Officer at Honeywell and also led data strategy for the Fortune 1, which is Walmart. Pulled that from his LinkedIn page today, but very impressive background. And then Xingchu was previously the Senior Vice President of Data at Home Depot and then the Chief Data Officer at Macy's, and now is the Chief Commercial and Analytics Officer at Pfizer. And yeah, we're very excited to have you all out, being willing to so quickly jump into the event. And then just the other kind of quick tidbit before I turn it over to them to introduce themselves is Guy actually met last week at a data event in the line to the bar, turned around and said, hey, how's it going? Started chatting, and was so fortunate that he was willing to jump in at the last second to take DJ's spot when he unfortunately got sick. And then Xingchu has been our kind of extended employee, I joke, at Datalogz in the last kind of 2.5, 3 years, but started off as an advisor. But how I actually met him, he responded to one of my cold emails where I reached out to any data leader that went to Texas A&M. And we were so fortunate that he responded to that. But yeah, I'll turn it over, Guy, to you first to intro yourself, and then to Xingchu.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Logan, for the invite. I'll be short notice, and also appreciate this invitation and event as well. Hi, everybody. Really nice to meet you. I love this industry. I love this space. So the concept of data analytics is near and dear to my heart. Started my career about 10 blocks from here. I really sort of got the bite or the hook as far as the value of data and analytics from that first role. First role was a really small company, and what we did is create a process for arbitraging airline tickets. We knew we were successful when these big airlines were calling us up and saying, you're screwing up our yield management systems. What are you guys doing? Right? So since that first sort of interaction with data and analytics, that's been my whole career. Led data and data product at Dun & Bradstreet for several years. There I learned the value of data and also how to tie revenue to data and also how to listen to customers when it comes to creating analytics. Left there, did a startup specifically to compete with Dun & Bradstreet, a company called Cortera, which was terrific. Learned about what it's like to work in an agile environment and also do those things that you always want to do in a big company. But we're always dealing with a lot of the process behind the scenes to make that happen. That company was acquired by S&P Global, which was awesome. Went on to do some work in healthcare and healthcare analytics. My goal was to fix healthcare. I did not succeed, but really enjoyed that space. Then went on to be Chief Data Officer at Honeywell, specifically focusing on their connected enterprises, so the IoT space, which was excellent. Really complicated company, but a really interesting role. Then from there, leading data strategy for the Walmart enterprise. And so taking a company that was very successful, very large, but also had very nascent capabilities when it came to really unifying data analytics and doing that at scale. So I enjoyed that role as well. Now I'm doing a new chapter, which is consulting. So that's been kind of fun. Just wrapped up an engagement for a company in Europe. Their focus was how to figure out raw materials through product, like the whole supply chain, and also really understand the carbon impact of their products. So for construction industry, huge impact to climate change, and so they're looking for ways to reduce that. So that was also pretty cool. Super data intensive process, super full of analytics as well. So hopefully that was short enough, but I've been around.
All right. Actually, that's great to hear your experience. I think we have similar track. So I'm Xingchu. Currently I'm with Pfizer, but my career track also started with a number of startups, and then we transitioned to a large corporation. If I look at myself, I'm more data scientist by heart. That's kind of how I got trained. Graduated from Texas A&M. That's kind of how Logan and I went way back there. But back in early 2000, there was no like AI or machine learning. This kind of very popular words. It's more about statistics, optimization, operation research. But I was lucky enough that I joined. First 10 years, I spent time with the 3 startups, and was lucky enough that all 3 had the successful exits. And 2 of them got acquired, got public. And the last one, the acquisition by Home Depot, that's how I transitioned from the startup world to the large corporation. The difference to me is in a startup world where we try to move fast, we try to disrupt the industry, but focus more on the solution development. Once you move to the large corporation side, a lot of consideration, transition also over to the integration, the adoption, the scaling the solutions. So spend another 10 years in the retail industry with Home Depot, and then with Macy's. And the reason I joined Pfizer is one, just looking at how we can leverage data analytics to make impact on people. And Pfizer, with a strong brand, is a good mix. The second reason is because the time spent with consumer-facing industry, actually it does help bring in a more customer-centric perspective to the pharma industry, which is more of a traditional type of manufacturing of the drugs. So looking forward to the conversation today, and data, the analytics is always my passion. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much for those intros. I actually didn't realize that both of you have startup backgrounds. So I guess that's the path to becoming a CIO, CDO, is start at a great startup. And 3 for 3 on successful exits, I think is unheard of. So hopefully we can make that 4 for 4 with Datalogz. And my first question, I'll start with you, Guy. But I feel like the data world in the last 18 months has been so focused on AI, ChatGPT, hey, how can we make everything smarter? And when I hear that, there's all kinds of use cases that come to mind. But in reality at enterprises, what actual AI use cases are you seeing that get you most excited and actually add value today?
Sure. So let's see. This has been around for a long time. Right? I don't have to give you all a history lesson, but AI has been around formally since the 50s. I mentioned my background. Dun & Bradstreet, we've been using analytics at scale for a very, very long time. What's been really interesting with Gen AI, in my opinion, is all of a sudden now it's open to the masses. Right? People can now actually try it and actually use it, and usually get very surprised by it. Right? Think about who were some of the first adopters of Gen AI? Me. Students, right? They love this. They are using this. They have incentive to do this, right? If I was in school, I wish I had a tool like this, right? So the concept of actually leveraging a capability like this is really important at a company, not only to build out some new products and services, but also to really think about your talent in the future and where they're coming from. Because the folks that are using it, like my daughter right now, who's a senior in college, she uses all these tools, right? They're going to be expecting that in the workforce, right? So there's a concept here that's sort of underlying about competitive advantage and how you want to set up your company for the future. And then it's also around what can you do today that's practical, right? There's a lot of hype around Gen AI. A lot of it deserved, a lot of it creates a lot of confusion. But the idea of analytics at scale brings a huge amount of value. I'll bring up a couple examples, right? So at Honeywell, they're a big company, right? They do a lot of work in aerospace. And they do a lot of building, aircraft engines and other units, but also do maintenance. And they used to have contracts for maintenance. And the president of the division said, I don't know which contracts make money or not. We just have no idea. And meeting with a lot of smart people there, we came up with the concept of figuring out exactly what equipment goes where, at what speed, what type of air, high particulates, high salinity, do the pilots brake fast, how long do they taxi? All these things that Honeywell has no visibility to. We're able to bring all these data sources together and actually create a pay-per-use model for Honeywell that had a really high impact on profitability and also really was explainable also to the customers as well. I don't know if anybody flies Southwest, but their pilots are really aggressive, right? They really hit the brakes hard and they do a lot of short hops. That's incorporated into the pricing. That's how we're able to move them forward. So an idea there I thought was just excellent as far as unlocking a paradigm shift in the way they do business, but also value on that front. Walmart, right? We walked that back. A large retailer I worked for used to have a lot of interactions with suppliers, as you probably noticed with Home Depot. By the way, if I'm not coming through, just yell at me. I tend to drop the mic. And a lot of the suppliers wanted a lot of really good analytics on how their products were moving through Walmart, right? Walmart is the Fortune 1, which means has the most revenue, right? 680 billion revenue, about 2.4 million employees, so a rather large company. They just move a lot of product. And what we did is we took all of this data that we had and all the thirst that our suppliers had for more analytics. We created a product that was actually a reporting analytic tool that we sold to our suppliers to really provide them these insights. It saved us a lot of time. It built out a really strong partnership with our suppliers. And the first year projection on sales or revenue from this product was $1 billion. So again, that's basis points when you think about the overall revenue. But that just tells you the concept of creating new products and services as we're seeing with AI, but also looking to say what new things can we do with our data, or what things can we create in the marketplace to provide a competitive edge or some new revenue.
Awesome. Well, thanks for walking through those use cases. I had no idea the Southwest engine piece and how you can price for that. Before Datalogz, I was working at JetBlue. And airlines, it's all about how much money you can save and, of course, maximize profit. So I assume Honeywell is making some smarter decisions with that model in place.
I will mention that we had it down to the tail number and the pilot. And that's when the unions stepped in. So we had to actually bring that back a little bit. So as you do this, also recognize there's some boundaries here that are appropriate and you have to work with. And don't mess with unions.
Yeah, and airlines. Yeah, the PII piece of the pilot name or anonymizing it, definitely an interesting case. And then Xingchu, I'm curious from your side on just overall views on how AI is kind of shifting your actual day-to-day at Pfizer on projects. What are real-world use cases that you've come across? And your overall thoughts of the next 6, 12, 5 years of what kind of this future of data looks like, given the changes that are now hitting mass markets and almost every enterprise can leverage AI?
Sure. So first of all, talking about the application in the enterprise, Pfizer is one of the places I've worked with, but I also want to echo Guy's earlier point about the AI. It's been there for a long time. Where even going back to my Home Depot days, by the way, who in the room, do you go to HomeDepot.com to just buy products, right? So if you ever go there, Home Depot has about 2 million products online, and if you go there, about over 95% of the products today, if you shop, the prices are automated. There's no manual touch anymore. But that solution was my team built like 10 years ago, using data scraping, AI. That time we didn't even call it AI. So the solution kind of existed. But then if you look at the business impact, that solution drive like double digit, the business growth. So it's just huge. But then coming to today with Gen AI, there's a lot of more awareness, the visibility, and thinking about day to day, we're start using it with more conscious recognition of the AI empowered. But reality is, since the day one we start using the smartphones, the AI is there, right? Start shopping on the e-commerce website. The personalization is all powered by the AI behind it. But when I think about Pfizer, or even broadly at the enterprise, to me there are like 3 different categories of applying AI to drive productivity and drive benefit. The first one is more of kind of office assistance, right? Copilot and some other more Gen AI and AI empowered solutions, which has very low risk factors, right? Even if it doesn't work well, it does not make a huge damage, and it's more intuitive and user friendly. So for those kind of AI applications, it's a lot easier to roll out to the entire company. But then the second category is, for example, some use cases like using the Gen AI to augment the marketing content generation, right? Which is a huge application. However, in that use case, we need to take more of a hybrid model, meaning here's more AI generated content, but you also need experts to monitor, edit, and tailor and finalize it. So to do so, you cannot just roll out to everybody. There's going to be training. There's a specific rollout plan associated with it. And then the third category actually tie back to more of driving key business decisions, where for those really need more specific data analytics expertise within the company. You really build the models, training the models, tuning it. So that's the different level, and that's where the accuracy really matters. So, but then going back to the other question of how do I see this evolution of the data with enterprise, where as we pay more attention to the AI side, to me, if we all use the same AI technology by the end of the day, there's no difference. There's no difference. We're all doing the same. So what is that differentiator? Data is really the differentiator, right? That's where you start first. And not too long ago, I think there's a New York Times suing OpenAI because they say, hey, that's our data, you cannot use it to train your model. So that's first thing to my mind is how do we reinvest in the data in terms of your security, your governance, your maturity, the curation of that. So, but then at the same time, if you think from this point going forward, because the power of and attention of using the Gen AI and the other technologies, a lot of more data will be generated, at a much faster pace. It will become a bigger challenge to everyone, right? Meaning sometimes when you look at the data, you couldn't even tell is that real data or kind of fake data, is that really computer generated, is that really authentic? So that becomes even harder, where I don't think today I haven't seen enough attention to understanding that data challenge, but I see that's coming very soon.
Very interesting. Yeah, one of the, use cases I think we see at Datalogz all the time is that kind of developer efficiency angle of things, where now in Power BI, Tableau, Click, well, you have your AI assistant. It makes it 10 times faster to start building new reports, new dashboards, and let's say Guy gives you an assignment, hey, I need the last 6 months of engine data. Well, that might have taken 2-3 months to go collect, figure out where it is, wait in cycles, and now you can figure out where it is, plus generate a templated report almost instantly. And from our customer side, we're saying this leads to more and more analytics sprawl overlap. And I guess another example of that we've seen is we actually recently brought on a retired lieutenant colonel from the Air Force who built out a large part of the Air Force's data strategy. And his big push, it took him 6 years to get, his most proud accomplishment is that he got Power Platform onto every single airman's desktop. And they have access to Palantir Foundry data to start analyzing, creating different visualizations. But now it's like, how in the world are we going to have the guardrails in place where we don't end up with a bunch of junk, unused things, duplication? And this problem is just accelerated by AI. So that user efficiency piece, we're seeing it all the time. But with the right guardrails in place, that's really where I think you can add value at the enterprise level. And then, Guy, I'm curious about your thoughts on kind of what the next 6 months, 2 years, 5 years look like for CDOs out there navigating kind of this different era, or maybe it's the same era with just kind of fancier branding and become the AI CDO type role, or what does that actually look like in enterprise?
I never really like questions like this, but I'll start off with that. But I think as you referred to the MIT Analytics and Data Conference last week, the temperature in the room, or the mood music, was that we're in the sort of the trough of disillusionment now with AI in general. Probably you could put a heavy emphasis on Gen AI, which I tend to agree with. Right, it's not unusual, right? We're sort of all waiting for this to happen after 24 months almost now. So I think the next 6 months or so is actually a great opportunity, because I think a lot of folks need to catch their breath a little bit. They need to figure out, where do I put this? I'm getting a lot of folks, either from the board or from senior folks in the company or others, saying, I want to be able to roll this out tomorrow, right? As you mentioned, there's a lot to rolling these things out across an enterprise. Forget all the legal side of this, which is also a huge, huge issue. I think it gives companies a lot of time to think this through. A lot of folks have already, maybe in this room, have already deployed a lot of things recently, and you're sort of testing those things out. The pipelines at most companies I speak to are full of these products ready to launch. They're just reticent to launch these. They saw the news with like Air Canada, if anybody's following that lawsuit, where Air Canada lost recently with some of the LLMs that they're dealing with, some of the old data they had in there. Or even the McDonald's one, which made front page news everywhere. There's that aspect of it, and there's also the concept of really some murky rules around governance and access rights. So I think it's a great opportunity again for cooling down a little bit, let people get some rational thinking around this, and really start to sort of get focused on what to do next. I think the next 2 years after that is probably where, especially who here is at a large company, probably maybe half if I were to guess. But these things take a while. I want a budget, right? How do I get it? Companies like to innovate like this. They want to, but okay, wait for the next budget cycle. When is that? Oh, January. Okay, well, we've got to do something, right? So I think you'll see a lot more formality happening in organizations, so roles getting more formalized, responsibilities, goals. Also, much better feel for where in the spectrum of analytics should we play and for what purpose. I think it's going to be clarified for a lot of companies. I think you'll see like a chief transformation officer, eat up the role of CDO and chief analytics officer, right? It should probably be brought together, for example. The early adopters, and this is where they're just going to peel away from the pack in 2 years. Right? These are folks, I'll name like Coca-Cola and John Deere. If anybody here has worked with them or interacted with them, they've been on this journey for a really long time, right? So they're way ahead. They not only have the smarts, but they've got the organizational piping and alignment to get this stuff done. And then I think at 5 years, you'll see everybody now have a really good footing on how to do this. They know what it means to be an athlete in this space. They understand their data assets. They understand how to bring it to market. And a lot of the issues that are getting people hung up right now about governance and ownership covers structured, unstructured data, how do you figure out ownership rights about structured data, all these things will take a little while to unwind. I think by then we'll just have a lot better guardrails in place for people to feel way more comfortable to accelerate on this.
Yeah, I think just kind of build upon your point where I think starting last year, the initial sentiment was more of, okay, now there's a new technology coming up and we cannot fall behind. So there's a very kind of anxiety to jump on it. And then once we start kind of rolling out some of the capabilities and hey, we got to have the AI agenda led by CEOs and sort of whole enterprise, I think 6 and 12 months later, it does not necessarily reflect on your financial sheet. Right? You still got to report your earnings on a quarterly basis. Like, where does that come up? You don't see the numbers. So then becomes more realization of, okay, we need to ask the question, where exactly that would help us and what's the plan to make it a materialized impact. So I think that's kind of where we're shifting the mind a little bit. But do I believe where we are and do I believe the future? Absolutely. But I think to your point, it does take a very intentional organizational effort from the people, process, technology. All three components have to come together to drive that.
Very interesting. And Guy, you mentioned the Chief Transformation Officer. I'm curious to dig a little bit deeper on what that means. Is that data transformation? Is that transforming the entire enterprise? But yeah, turn it over to you there.
Yeah, I would, the term CDO is one that is pretty misunderstood, I think, in many companies. It's got really, a lot of expectations, but there's a lot of recognition that has to occur when companies bring on a role like that. They need to have a seat at the table, which is sometimes hard. In my opinion, being tucked under IT is probably not the greatest spot for them in the long run. And you also have to fight for budget, right? And so you've got a couple structural things that make it difficult. And in many companies, they also are handed expectations and then look and say, my gosh, our data is sort of ugly. What do I do, right? We've got stuff everywhere. I've got to go back to fundamentals. Intestinal fortitude at the C-level doesn't last that long, right? People want value, they want results. That's the expectation. It's made the role really difficult. And I think the same corollary work with the Chief Analytics Officer as well. To your point about the data, right? If the data isn't there and it's not AI ready, the organization isn't there, it's going to be just like all the folks like me that hired data scientists, 6-7 years ago, coming in and saying, what do I do? And saying, well, go wrangle some data, right? It's a really tough spot. So anyhow, I think the idea of bringing some of these threads together and creating a role that is actually around transformation, in every company is going to be different, but really combining the data and the analytics side to work incredibly close together and intertwined, as well as work with the business, I think would be an interesting place to be.
Or I think also to your question, like to me, when I think about Chief Data Officer or Chief Transformation Officer, when we say Chief Data Officer, it's more talking about your technology. But the hard part to change is not the technology, the hard part is about people. So that's why the transformation is more focused on, hey, I gotta change people's behaviors first. Then we can embrace the power of technology and data and realize that. So without recognizing that, I think companies or large organizations will continue to struggle. It's like, I put a role, there's a CDO, I gave the money, and where's the return? Well, if you don't use that data properly, you won't see that returns.
I just add on to that, because it's the second time you brought this up. I think it's a really important point. This is a technology problem, right? It's a data problem, right? But fundamentally it's an organizational challenge. Somebody mentioned to me that the concept to get this right, sort of a multiplicative viewpoint on what's your business knowledge and acumen, right? Is your data AI ready? Right? Are your AI and analytics in place and working? And also, what's your organizational psychology around this? You said you multiply all those things together to determine the likelihood of outcome. And if any one it's something that is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot to do to get this done, but your biggest issue, I know when I was at Walmart, I was on the road every week, and the main part of my role was communication, alignment, partnership, and getting folks to come with me on the ride versus sort of standing back. And so those are the hardest issues, for sure. Most people tend to underestimate those. I have in the past myself.
And Xingchu, you mentioned that return on data. Are you able to talk a little bit more about what that return is from any of your many roles and experience? Just curious to learn a little bit more there.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we talk about the return of data, I think it takes multiple steps, right? For business, right, the return comes at the end comes for the financial benefit. However, it takes steps from even understanding the usage of data. That's step one. We throw data out there, but not every organization fully understands what's the usage of the data, right? So then the second step is, do we have a more of the right talent and the right plan to execute upon realizing the data, meaning we do sort of the analytics, reporting, more advanced AI, etc., etc. But even that is still kind of sit within the technology framework, where it becomes reality is there's an integration part. Right? Most of the time there's an integration depending on who are the users. Ideally, we want to automate, meaning you connect your AI or analytics solutions directly to execution, fully automated. That's the ideal, beautiful world. You don't need to go through a lot of change management. But most of the cases not. Then becomes people and process coming together. Where I see in terms of the benefit of the data, it's not only about, that's why, as the chief analytics officer or chief data officer, how do we articulate the value? It's not only about the financial benefit. It's also about the speed, the reliability, the accuracy. That all drives to the value. So when you think about productivity that the mature curated data will provide the organization, it's tremendous. But talking about data and the return, to me, also need to understand the dynamics. Meaning, if you have kind of like your return as the vertical axis, but then you have your time as the horizontal, it's not a linear curve. Doesn't mean you spend money today, tomorrow you just get a double up. There's a kind of exponential, right? You gotta have that patient and commitment. Then you're gonna see the return over time. And hopefully that's gonna be more exponential. But understanding that with the organization, it's more of not a number, it's more of the purpose.
Very interesting. And Guy, do you have anything, to add on that, how you measure value as a CDO?
So let's do a poll. How many people think a CDO's role falls under the concept of a cost center or a profit center? How many people think cost center? Interesting, maybe a small amount. How about profit center? Okay. Yeah, I tend to lean on the profit center myself. And that doesn't mean what you're doing, you put money over anything else. It means constructing your organization to think like a profit center. You need to differentiate yourself from other cost centers there. You want to be seen as a partner with the business. You also want to be really thoughtful on the money that you're getting and the work that you're getting done. So I think first and foremost, it's a change in mind shift to being a profit center. And a couple of my roles, I've said I want to have a revenue goal, just like a business partner. Look at me like I was crazy. Right? I said, no, I want you to have some of my goals, by the way, because I need to be successful. And so I think that is maybe a small thing, but a shift in mindset that I think is super helpful. And with that, it's about quantitative value. Right? What are you doing for why? It's really easy to say, I just think this is going to be a good idea. We all love to live in that world. That doesn't work well, right? So you need to do your homework. You need to understand what your goals are, what you're trying to get done, how you're going to measure and communicate value. By the way, you'll never be right, but you want to be able to have a starting point so that if you're starting to go off track, you can say, hey, should I keep going? Do I need to pivot? Reset expectations? So that idea of quantitative value is probably one of the hardest things that I've seen CEOs struggle with, and especially challenging their business partners. I'm not going to do that unless you tell me what the impact is, and I really need to know what that is. I'm shocked at how many times business partners look and say, I don't know. So good, let's find out. So I think that's certainly a big part of it. Qualitative is also really key, right? So it depends on funding, and it depends on what you're trying to get done. So I've done some work around things like threat detection, right, and threat avoidance. Those are things that are really hard to put a quantitative value on. You can sure put a qualitative value in things. So each particular case is different, but I would always lean on the concept of quantitative. And also make one more quick comment. I was working with a company that does specialty titanium work. So work for military, work for aircraft, things of that nature. And we were optimizing their manufacturing process. And so did some analytics, and especially ML in this case, to optimize the manufacturing process. And when we created the business case for this, we were really pushing hard to say, yes, we're going to make manufacturing more efficient. But what does that mean on our whole ecosystem? It means less raw materials. It means less waste. It means your machines are running and running more effectively. It means probably less maintenance. It means less overtime work. And oh, by the way, it also means increase in NPI scores, right, or customer satisfaction, because they're getting their orders on time and correct. No returns, right? There's a lot when you look at some of the analytics that when you're doing this, especially for companies that are struggling in this space or trying to gain momentum, getting people to recognize the value they're bringing. Really, really work hard to understand what is that real end-to-end value that I'm going to bring, and don't be afraid to bring that up. Right? I don't want to say make up numbers, but go work with these folks and say, what if I do this? How will this affect you? That also then brings people into your fold as stakeholders, because you never know what's going to happen where you actually need to get access to another source of information where you don't want to have to run through a lot of hoops. Right? So think really broadly as you're creating these value props as well.
Very interesting. And also, Xingchu, I think you raised your hand on saying it's a cost center, not a profit center. Were you in between?
So the reason I raise hand as a cost center, meaning that that's most of the time how the business thinks about this function, right? Doesn't mean like I necessarily agree, right? But at the same time, I think also you made an earlier point about, hey, for this role, probably not a good idea to sit with IT. Well, IT is cost center. Right? So if you want to be a profit center team sitting in a cost center org, it just doesn't work. But I think if you think about even the CTO role, 15 plus years ago, the CTO role itself is very short tenured role because business doesn't understand what that means and the expectation hasn't been aligned. Now it's kind of given, right? It's like you gotta have the role, you gotta have the team, and you gotta keep the operations. Now I think for data, we're going through the same kind of transitional period, and so it's gonna take time to realize and recognize this is more given. But if you play the other direction, saying, well, imagine a world that you don't have the data, and you run your business, like, you cannot imagine that day, how can you do it? So it makes it pretty obvious, but as a business organization, I think that's still kind of going through that understanding and then formalizing it.
Okay, right. I'm glad you corrected kind of when your hand was raised there. I was like, hopefully profit focused a little bit. And then, my last question, then we'll open up to audience questions. This one's for you, very targeted, Xingchu, and my Datalogz plug question is, Xingchu, why are you excited about Datalogz and the future of what we're building?
So this is a little sales pitch, right? But Logan and I, we know each other for some time, right? Even before this one. So we start, talking about ideas. When Logan talked to me about the Datalogz, it's a very, very specific focus. But if you look at the market, In terms of being a CDO for a long time or CEO for a long time, I was looking for the help. I was looking for the right solution. Help me manage my data better. But I've been looking around, couldn't find one. And then when we start talking about the idea, I was like, wow, this is amazing, and really gonna help us to have more confidence, have more better governance, and then just maximize the value. So when we are paying for cloud computing bills or data bills, you're paying for the efficient data usage, not all zombie reports and redundancy and duplications. So that's one, I'm very excited. And then second is just thinking about today, and as I shared at the beginning, you see this data growth is accelerated as well. So there's an even greater demand from everybody, right? So this is a very much needed solution. And the third piece, actually, I got time to spend time with Logan and the team. This is a very exciting and energetic team. So that's why, because for data, solving this problem, it's not an easy problem. You have to be very creative, innovative, and then figuring out what's the most effective solutions to drive the impact, but also make it much easier for implementation. So I've seen the progress over the past 12, 18 months, just tremendous progress from there. So that's why I'm very excited about the team, the solution, and what the future.
Can
I love a second sales pitch. Yeah.
There's a reason I'm here. It's because I believe in your mission. I would also say one of the challenges around data and analytics is just the idea of trust, right? And so it's a double-edged sword. When there's data around, you can copy it, you can do lots of things. The next thing you lose track of what's actually getting done, and you might have what financial people or accounting people say 2 sets of books, right? That hurts me as a CDO in the long run, because now the truth is there in all your systems, right? Maybe as tough as those systems are with some legacy debt and some of the technical debt and access to get at that, but the truth is there. Companies have, because they weren't controlling this or keeping an eye on it, this stuff is sprawled and just created a huge challenge for the work that we're both trying to do, which is to lead around trusted data. And so the idea of tools that can help automate that and drive the concept of data analytics being an asset to the company, I think is really critical, right? You treat an asset very different than you do a commodity. I think data and analytics are both assets. I think this reinforces that type of learning, which I think is really, really important for the company as well.
And also going back to the, if you want to build a team as a profit center, profit equals your revenue minus cost, right? You got to control both. And we'll build a team and drive revenue, but if you manage your costs in a very efficient way, that's going to increase your profit. So that's why I think the solutions are critical.
I appreciate that you're appreciating the profit center side of things. I like that.
Awesome. And my last story about Xingchu, I guess about 3 years ago, he came to our office when I think we were 6 employees, and we locked him in a conference room. I don't think we let you leave, but basically grilled him for probably about 4 hours on what he thinks the dream product that he would want to build. And that product feedback we got very on. I think we still have some of your quotes on sticky notes on walls in our office. This is what we're building for. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being on the panel. And now I'll turn it open to the audience if there's any questions that anyone wants to ask either Guy or Xingchu. Pablo.
Xingchu, you talked about how the perceived within organizations of a data function might be a cost. What has been some things that you've done to change that mentality and show them how it has become, and it actually is a profit center?
That's a great question. So I tried multiple approaches through my previous couple jobs, where initially you're more kind of thinking, hey, if I can prove, right, I can show like mathematically, this is how the numbers will show the benefit. It's got to work. We tried that, so that's one. And then you realize, okay, because for business, it's not that kind of black and white situation. So oftentimes, especially this is not like a transaction type of activities. You bring this, offer products or services, you're driving a company. This is more about making better decisions, right? Using the data to make better decisions. You're comparing against something. That's making it more difficult. Then later on, I also realized, because the organization is also relatively new, your voices also needs to be vetted through the business lenses. So the other approach I start trying when I transitioned from Home Depot to Macy's and to my current job is actually I partner with my business side very closely. Meaning when we build a business plan at the beginning of the year, there is a specific dependency on your analytics data and AI solutions, and there's committed, benefit, financial benefit as part of that plan. Then becomes where natural is a profit conversation. You're no longer a separate component of that. So I think with a large organization, this is super important.
And if I could just add on to that, a great answer is profit, indirect profit is really where most of this is coming in, but communicating that. And I would also say, never let a good crisis go to waste. We've all heard that, right? So when you see that there are issues going on in the business, what we do in the world of data analytics is solve a whole heck of a lot of things, right? Go out there, find out how you can help. COVID was a great example of that. Many folks, probably in this room, saw that and said, okay, well, I need to reposition what this company does. Right? I happened to be in retail at the time. To do that, went out to the head of the US market for the stores. Okay, what do you need? Because people are not going to be going to stores. How do we work this out? How do we figure out how to spin up like delivery services or dark stores, things of that nature. So always keep an eye on what's going on, and if you see stress in the organization, go try to help. There's usually a way that you can do so. And if it doesn't work, you've made a new friend, right? Or at least try.
So, just continuing on the profit, cost center thing, is there anything you can learn from other departments that often use cost center like marketing, where attribution of, say, things like media spend has been the constant problem there? We know some of it's working, we just don't know which of it's working. So you try and build attribution models and so on to determine where your spend is actually delivering results, or build various types of models that try to influence where it's working. I'm wondering if there's anything that the data folks can learn from those folks, the HR folks and so on, that they've used in the past and some have used successfully to sort of get across that value proposition. Then just one further thing, the most obvious thing is packaging your data as a product and selling it to the marketplace, which I think you gave the Walmart example of selling that to suppliers. So what are the other opportunities for companies to become profit centered by being a line of business that generates a profit?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say there's a bit of a fine line when you say profit center. I think you call out a couple key things, which is there's always learnings. Every business is different. That's why some of these being up here is sort of tough, because we're generalizing. Every company is at different maturity, they have different problems to solve, different structures, etc. But a lot of these ideas are locked up in business somewhere, right? So a lot of things that I've done, it's a team effort, right? And so meeting with HR, figuring out what their issues are, marketing, things of that nature, how they quantify that to the business is really important, right? Somebody said to me the other day, what do you think about centralization or decentralization of AI? I said, well, I have my own opinion, but what is your company good at? Is if they're really good at decentralization, you need to give that a pretty hard look, or centralization, right? So looking at these different verticals, if you would, or company or groups, is a really good way to understand how to make your value prop and pitch. And also look for ways you can do things together to help solve that problem as well. The concept of data commercialization or data monetization, I don't really like that term, but data commercialization is always an aspect. It's usually a big lift for companies to do. And you want to be really thoughtful around how you do that. Like, I'm not sure I would sell you raw data because you would take it and you'd create the analytic and then say, I don't need your data anymore, right? So you want to be thoughtful about the way you create these products and what things are actually giving away in that process as well.
In terms of the CDO being a profit center, right? I think you can enable profits and all. Being a profit center directly for a lot of companies is not there, unless you're a data company like Bloomberg, et cetera, network and different companies. But it's more about enabling the profit and the revenue and operational part of it, right? Because you're never going to have revenue directly, but as you mentioned, it's more about you're making better decisions.
I would say absolutely. So I think the words I used were think like a profit center. You want to act in that way. Do you actually have a line that you can actually put a price on something and sell it, right? Most large companies, you've got to go through a partner or another channel to do that. So the idea here is sort of a state of mind to say, let me get really close, as you described it, I think perfectly. Let me get close to the business. Let me figure out how to make value from this and go ahead and execute.
Absolutely, and I think it's mindset, cultural change. Because when you think of data, you think CDO. Also, you think of it a cost center, more defensive, access and all. It's a mindset change that I look at it this way. Analytics and data science is actually making money or saving money, and you're enabling that, right? And just your question on the data monetization, right? A lot of people think most companies are internally monetizing the data, right? The fact that you're using the data more is monetized versus, the classic sense of monetization is I'm selling data. You're not selling data, but you're leveraging data.
Excellent points, Peter. And if you put on your finance hat for a minute, right, what's a really good model, right? Fixed cost and then low variable cost, right? That's data, right? It takes a while, it takes a lot to get it going and operating, but then once you have it, the more you use it, the more you actually get margin from doing so.
How do you guys think about leveraging external resources versus internal resources for making these developing systems using data, and what are the trade-offs and what do you have to articulate internally to make that possible?
I think that's a good question, but there's no one size fits all answer. So there's a staffing model benefit, right? You have the full-time versus contractor. There's a pros and cons of each model, but if you can have a benefit of both, meaning you have a bit hybrid, you have more agility. Well, when you have the lean years, you have more agility, you have more flexibility to spin up and down. So there's benefit on the staffing side. But then in terms of developing the data solutions, that's a little bit different, meaning there's analytic solutions that building that internal expertise, because you got to understand the business and the data, then driving analyst insights, that's super critical in terms of, because most of the time I work on the business side. So that's super critical. So investing in your talent and that analyst capability are really great. At the same time, we want to go beyond it, meaning, hey, you want to productionize it, you want to have a more repeatable data analytics products like software package, and et cetera. That's where there's a fine line, in my opinion. Meaning, at the end of the day, depending on the company culture, it's not even about the individual project or product. It's your company culture. What is you're really known for? Like you mentioned, are you good with centralized, decentralized? Are you good with building software solutions? Most companies are not set up that way. So then, if you really try to stretch yourself, I think your success rate is less. So you have to make that balance, right?
Just to add a little bit more color to my question, why would you buy Datalogz services versus building it in-house yourself?
That's exactly the balance, right? Meaning, if you try to build that yourself, like it take you longer. Number one, and then number two, like in terms of the functionalities, right? You don't get a benefit from the scale. Meaning, if you think about Datalogz as a company, they have multiple clients, where they have the benefit, that benefit of scale, meaning they can really be a features benefit of broader client base, and then you can benefit from it. So I think that's where there's that buy versus build debate.
Yeah, everything you said, I agree with. I usually ask myself the question: okay, you can build it, but should you? Right? Is this something that a lot of companies have large IT teams, right? They can do a lot of these things, but is that really where they should spend their time? That's usually where I say if there's something that's up and running and going, to your point, some of the kind of flywheel of new products, being ahead of the game. Do you want to be chasing somebody who already does this, or do you want to be leveraging this capability? So I usually ask myself that question. That's always a sticky topic. It's a good question.
Hey, you both mentioned some of the big challenges that CDOs face organizationally, and we all know some of the tenure that typical CDOs have. And then you also mentioned how the CTO role has evolved over time, and organizations now have a much better understanding of where that role should fit and realistic expectations of what they should want from a CTO. So since the both of you are at the tip of the spear of this, I was wondering if you could sort of peg where you think we are. Like on a scale from 1 to 10, where do you think organizations were 2 years ago in terms of understanding, or 3 years ago, understanding what a CDO should do, and then in the last 2 or 3 years, has that changed, and if so, where do you think we are now?
It's a great question. As you're asking it, I was wondering, have we gotten worse or not? So I think as I've said, every company is really, really different, right? So that makes these things hard. I would say I'll add the comment that the tenure of a CDO is about 22, 23 months at the moment. A CFO is 21 months, right? So there's churn in lots of roles, right? Especially at that level, that's just part of the game for a variety of different reasons. Some good, some just silly animal tricks, right? I would say there's a lot more to go, and that's almost why I sort of feel like some of these roles need to be consolidated. There's only so many. Think about it, only so many C-levels that you really can have to be functioning and operational. So I would answer saying I think generally better. The challenges is now companies are saying, oh shoot, we need a CDO because the board asked if we had him. So let's hire someone. What are they going to do? Don't worry about it. I've had many friends and colleagues that have taken on that role, and I said, okay, what's your budget? I don't have a budget yet. That's certain doom for most of these folks, right? So I would say there's more to go in general, and again, some companies are way ahead of others.
A number? 1 to 10.
I thought you'd forget that.
Sorry, we're data people. We're data people. 2.
So where 10 is, you're in a good spot?
10 is everything is all set up for success.
I'd say probably 5. I think we're sort of generally early stages for most companies.
Yeah, so I think if you're curious about on this topic, there are two gentlemen so well known in the data analytics field. One is Tom Davenport. The other is Brandon Bean. They published a number of studies in terms of the CDO roles and tenures and etc. I had conversations with them from time to time, and I think what you're asking is one dimension. There are multiple dimensions to measure the maturity of this role. In terms of, for example, the number of companies having this role, that has been boosting very quickly. So it's more, welcomed, expected, and demanded. So from that perspective, but the tenureship of that role is still pretty short. Meaning companies in general are still trying to figure out what that role means, what's the impact, and what to expect. But then at the same time, I think to your point, in terms of like having the enough investments and to really for the role to be successful, I think that's where it mixed bags, right? So, but personally, what I start to see more successful stories of being in a role and really driving impact, and I start seeing more of that. So I think that's a good trend. But now with the Gen AI becomes so popular, it's gonna give it another push. But this is definitely a multi-year journey.
So we only have time for one more question. I don't know. Okay, fine. I wanted to give that chance. That side a chance, but. Okay.
I was going to say, while we're waiting, I'll just add on to the one comment. A lot of companies don't have CDOs, but they still are functioning and operating and getting that work done, right? So don't get too crazy about the title in that case, because a lot of companies are way advanced in that role, and they're obviously successful, and they're obviously doing it. And sometimes they've chosen to not actually bring on a CDO for some of the reasons we talked about.
So this is adjacent to the question about the profit center. So I think part of the challenge is that it's pretty hard to quantify the value of BI. Like as an example, I used to run a small engineering team about 7 people at a startup, and I used to have the head of analytics report to me. And the question I asked him is like, if all the BI dashboards loaded twice as fast, how much more would you pay for it? Like on the flip side, if they loaded twice as slowly, how much would you want to save? And like we never had a good answer like for that question. Like how do you think about that? Or are there examples, like framework, a mental model, or like thinking about questions like that?
I can give you one example. It doesn't necessarily answer your question, but it can show the power of the speed, what it means. So this was a long time ago, at least 10 years ago, when I first kind of started my work at the Home Depot. And that team does a solution, more of like a optimization solution to analyze where you put products. Home Depot has about 2,000 stores in North America. So what products do you put in which store? Optimization problem. The solution itself, if you run it one time, it's a SaaS-based at that time. Run it one time is about 12 hours. So it's like, if you're like, okay, that's reasonable, right? If I run it tomorrow, I'm gonna know the answer. But if you look at the reality, what happens is you run the analysis, then you sit down with your business stakeholder, let's review the results. And then there's gonna be some feedback. Say, hey, let's change assumptions here and there, let's rerun it. So you go back through that, rerun it. Then you got to schedule the next meeting. Well, not everybody waiting for your results. When you schedule the next meeting is next week. You do a few runs, it's a month is gone. So when my team looked at the problem, at that time, 10 years ago, like software engineers and whole package hasn't been really a popular concept across all companies. But I had my team, we kind of take it apart, we reviewed it with front and back end engineering work, and really cut down runtime to like 15 seconds, let's say. So 12 hours compared to 15 seconds, it's not a lot, right? But what happens is now you go to the meeting, you run once, have a conversation, you run twice within meeting, you run third time. 30 minutes, you're done. So you cut like a month's time to 30 minutes. That's a huge save. And if you run your business that fast, you can make a lot more smarter decisions at right time. So that's just one example.
That's all the time we have left. You can talk to the panelists after. And just a reminder, we are doing those data leader interviews back there. I think we have 8 slots left, 5 to 7 minutes, $20 Amazon gift card. Yep. Okay.
Perfect. Tina, thanks for closing out, and thank you to the panelists so much for being willing to join us. And also, there's lots of food and drinks, and thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.